7:03?
Why don't you do that again? We just started
Okay.
recording.
Yeah, that's right. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:03. The main topic, the only topic on our agenda is the FY22 budget.
Yeah, so I'm going to pull it up so we can look at it. It hasn't changed since you looked at it. Ed can talk about. Ed, did you know what were you able to find those revenue numbers, Ed?
No, actually, it was the FY20 final payment for the special ed. So the budget is the same budget that I presented on the 30th.
Okay, so it hasn't changed at all then, but
Okay, can we just take a moment? Bill Gates has his hand raised.
I had a couple questions, and I just want to say that Katie answered them quite well. My questions had to do with the jumps in para, and Katie explained that we went from budgeting those by hiring people to hiring our own people. So that was really the only question I had, and there's a couple more, but Katie answered them. So that's all I wanted to throw out.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, David, sorry.
no, that's fine. I just I think we had said that we just wanted some time to reach out if we had questions. I know that as Bill said, he asked a couple of questions. I think Ed said he got a question that he addressed. But I think we were just going to look at the bottom line, which is right there. I don't know if everybody can see this or not. It's $10,275,554. So if we want to, for discussion purposes, just make a motion to adopt the supervisory union budget in that amount, and then we can get it on the table for discussion, and we can review the assessments as well.
So moved.
Nancy Pedrick moved, and the amount is $10,275,554. That's for Wendy's sake.
Second.
And that was Colleen with the second.
Okay, it has been moved, and there is a second to approve the supervisory union budget in the amount of $10,275,554 to be raised through assessments. Is there further discussion? And Chris? Oh, no, sorry, Elizabeth, I think I see you first.
Hi, I just had a question about whether righting wrongs, since it's at our supervisory union board, since I guess our supervisory union board is the one that's employing them, how will they be paid?
Well, first of all, I Elizabeth, this is David. I would assume that we will have an invoice from them.
But from what, from whence? From what department?
Yeah,
from what budget will they be paid?
Yeah, so what we usually do with an organization like that and something that comes up, we tend to take it and divide it, 3 ways or 4 ways, I guess, if you count the supervisory union. And we usually take it out of a professional development line, because we all have that line. Heartland has a line, Weathersfield has a line, Mount Scottney has a line. So we divide it up, or the other way we do it sometimes is, as Ed explained to you last time. That's why I'll just take it out of my budget, again, professional development, because when you think about it, it's really the same either way. Because if I take it out of my budget, it just goes back into the assessments and gets divided out, you know, across those assessment lines. So, and that'll happen every now and then. A speaker will come up, or some professional development will come up, or somebody's going to facilitate something. Usually they're not large amounts, but we tend to divide those up.
But I guess what I'm asking is because I mean, does the no. I know you'll find a way to pay for it. That's not really what I'm asking. What I am asking is how it will be accounted for, because they're helping to write policy. So it's not really professional development. It's really it is professional development. It is facilitating, but it's mostly for the purpose of writing policy. And I wondered how that would be accounted.
Professional services. It would be a contracted service, professional services.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
And the way you just described it, Elizabeth, it probably would be more likely a supervisory union expense, because that's where policy is developed. But yeah, it would be under. So you said what, Ed? Professional services, probably where we put it.
Yeah, and there's $20,000 in Angie's budget for things like this.
Yeah, and you're talking about for next year.
Yes.
I think we're going to get that bill before July, but you never know.
Right, and that was what I was going to say, is that we are working with them right now.
Okay.
And that would be more of this year's, the current fiscal year that we're in, as opposed to the one starting July 1st.
Exactly. But it would still come out of that same line, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
And as Elizabeth was saying, it is policy and as well as community facilitation. And the task force that is working with them is at the supervisory union level. So it would be this board that would be approving or coming out of the funds for the supervisory union.
Exactly.
Are there any other hands? I'm not seeing any.
And by the way, these assessment figures, just so everybody knows, two things. We've talked about this before. They're somewhat offset by the fact that transportation is coming out of our local budgets. So, for example, in the case of Wethersfield, it's almost like a negative impact in terms of an increase in assessments. But these assessments, I think, Ed, are the ones when we've been presenting the draft budgets in the individual districts, that's what you've been using, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we're still waiting for the actual special education reimbursement amounts. Ed thought he had them today, but apparently that's not what came in today. So this could change a little bit, but not very, on the revenue side, not very dramatically. The expenditure budget would still stay at that $10,275,000.
Scott, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Amy? Okay, just on a different laptop. So if everybody is okay with that, that's good.
Nice and clear.
Thank you. I had I'm one of the people that spoke up last time, so I kind of got some thoughts together. So it's fair that I share them so that we're not here another night, for no reason at all. But so oops, sorry, unplugged it. So one thing that I guess I could say I've concluded over years of negotiating with the team is that one of the surest ways to control costs in our districts is, I don't mean this like snidely, but to really, really, really control hiring. Because once we have hired folks, there's an awful lot of obligations that go with that. And really the lion's share of our district spending is in that ballpark. So I think that we always have to like put that up against like what our community's goals are, obviously, and our wishes and what we're trying to do for our communities. And we have to, obviously it can't be a school district without hiring lots of talented folks, and we want to do that. So I think that one of the balancing spots is, I mean, one thing that makes an awful lot of sense to me and has for some years is that the supervisory union is where we really see tons of efficiency that way. I just wanted to, kind of give some supportive words to David, because last time he was, really being very, very careful, expressing a lot of, wanting to be really, really careful where we are in our state financing, education financing, and of course our district as well. So, I mean, I just think that when you look at it closely, like if you're hiring locally and for perhaps you don't need a person 5 days a week, but you can find yourself hiring less than a full-time equivalent, but perhaps the person has just enough, time on the job where they still qualify for some significant benefits, namely the health benefit. And so, that's not something that we're so likely to run into when we hire someone at the SU level who can be, probably not, we're the SU board, so we're not talking about so much teachers, but we're talking about department leaders, for instance. Because really what this gets back to is my concern about the communications. The piece identified in the big picture learning work was that I'm still stuck on is the need for a communications leader. And I mean, you guys could, if you know what I'm talking about, give me a nod or something, because I remember what we were discussing last time. And so that bothers me a little bit, Dave, because it was, that process took, I can't really can't pinpoint that time period, but if you go back in time to when Craig Locarno was offering some community meals, and I was sitting in Heartland having spaghetti with somebody, and they were all fired up because they had just been just given Dave their name, and they're going to be part of the big picture learning portrait of a graduate process. And it seemed like forever ago, but that was quite a community engagement there. That the board really was all in that. I was not in that, but so one thing that comes out of it is an identification of some kind of a need in the communications department. And I say that in a general, very generally, like there, if you go through the website, there's just, I know nobody has time, but there's people on the website who don't work here anymore and that kind of thing. So I would just, the other thing you see is, that directors, all of us, we want to help. And so we step up to the plate. Sometimes that can be a little gray area, like, because any of us aren't going to be here forever. So we want to make sure that the system is doing what it's supposed to do, and they're not relying on directors who happen to have talents in one area or access to certain kinds of help for the school district. I mean, it is helpful, and I think, but it's just not a rock solid place or it's not something we should rely on, in my opinion. So anyways, to close up, I still would be fine if David wanted to, hire someone sooner, not later, to assist in communications. I still think the food project is a great example of us working together. And the other thing that comes to mind is renting the extra space in the bank. That was a kind of a quick decision, and as far as I know, it's been a good one. So when we have to spend, and we spend in the central district, it's efficient. That's the way I see it. Thank you, Amy.
You're
I'm done.
welcome. Scott. Thank you. And you're right, when we hire when we have something, a program at the supervisory union level, then all of our districts can take advantage and we're all chipping in for it, as opposed to one particular district being fully responsible. And Elizabeth, your hand is raised.
I just wanted to agree with you wholeheartedly, Scott. I do think that we should make room for a communications person. I think for many, many different reasons. But I wanted to clarify something with you. Are you saying that directors are too helpful?
Yeah. Was that a question? Yeah.
Perhaps. I mean, I'm not, I don't want to, it's not unfair to really point fingers, but I mean, it's just, if we get into the mix too much, you know, besides
I know.
doing like the committee. Okay.
But I agree with you that we need a communications person for many different reasons. Because we need to have a marketing of our various schools. We need an effort that way. We need a way to we need somebody to come and make all of our minutes searchable so that we can follow a topic all the way back. And all you have to do for that is to combine PDFs. But who in the world has time to do that? We need somebody to clean up the website and make sure that it's, you know, consistent all the way across. We need some, I mean, there are lots of projects, but there's also like every day, you know, we need somebody to make sure that we have the same tone going out. With all due respect, David, on all communications with our families. We need to make sure that we have, you know, that we advertise well when we have these little victories that we often do with what I'm trying to think of an example, math team at Windsor High School, or the 3D printing club, or all these different or, you know, an article being printed about Albert Bridge School, or all these different things. We should be getting out there, not just among our community, but outside of our community to pump up the schools. We desperately need that. I'm sorry. I'll go out and get down off of my soapbox. Apologize.
Elizabeth's reminded me of a few things, Amy, if I could just speak one more time. Some examples. So, thank you. Some examples from the website, which I don't think are huge, and I think that we just it's something we obviously you got to keep. It's either going to be a coffee table book, the website, or it's going to be it's going to be active and alive, and it has to be alive. And this is where people go to find information. So, for example, it rubs me the wrong way that we're listed as schools. Because I think, for instance, you know, there's at least 2 districts now that have high school choice, and it just kind of leaves a whole bunch of students and families kind of out there. Like we're school districts, and we're together as a supervisory union. We're not the schools of Westsesu. We're school districts, and we're school directors.
Yeah, so it could be Heartland School District, and then Heartland Elementary School, Mount Escutney School District, and then Windsor School, Albert Bridge.
But, you know, I wasn't in on coming up with that. I mean, people came up with that fast, and, you know, everybody deserves an awful lot of credit. It's just something we got to work on, that's all. And it's hard to find time. And then the situation we're in is hard. Another good example is the first page for Heartland. Down at the bottom, there's like a four paragraph section. I'm not there right now, but I was looking at this in the past couple of weeks. There's a question in front of Heartland right now, and I think it's and it has to do with school choice. And the fourth paragraph of that thing notes to any reader that Heartland High School students are able to pick a local public high school. And then it goes on to say, or an independent or a private school, and of their choice, and Heartland will pay the statewide average. So that would be the perfect place to correctly say that families are able to access the statewide average for approved, quote, approved independent schools in Vermont. It's not just, so that is, and that kind of leads right to the question that's in front of Heartland's school district right now. It's what is an approved independent school? And I shouldn't get into that anymore, but if that was right front and center on the Heartland website, there'd be a lot less confusion as to what you could do.
So just to clarify things, we do have a webmaster. That person also does a lot of other things, but we're more talking about the budget as opposed to the different tasks that a communications person might have. But I do agree that in terms of a communications person, ever since I have been on the school board, which is a few years now, there has been conversation about needing a more comprehensive communication plan. It will happen for about 6 months, and then things just kind of go off. So that would be good to have someone who is concentrating on all of our schools, so that there is the tone is the same, as Elizabeth was saying, and there is someone we would know that it's being taken care of, instead of each of us on our school board saying, oh, well, I wonder, did David tell Christine to do this, or did David tell someone, either Colleen or Jennifer, to do something, because that's what it's been left to. And just to know that that role is being, that job is being fulfilled would be good. Bill, you had your hand up for a moment.
Yes, just for a moment, just sort of tying into what Scott said about, and just sort of the caution when we begin to discuss about, X, Y, and Z, what we want to do. Hiring a new position is a very expensive venture. And like anything, we got into talking about having a data administrator, a communication specialist. I strongly feel the first step is to do an analysis of who does what now before we come up with a comprehensive plan of the direction we want to do. That's all.
Right. Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on the budget?
I just wanted to comment real quickly, because I appreciate, first of all, what everybody's saying, but I especially, because Angie and I have talked about this, the whole administrative team has talked about this, how do we roll out some of those critical key points in that strategic plan? But I think we all felt that, there's a little bit more analysis that needs to be done, and sort of cross-checking job descriptions as they exist, and then kind of getting ahead of, a job description for this. I mean, because obviously, as you all mentioned, some great examples. There's a lot of things we could be doing about communicating effectively, and I'm even thinking about things like town reports and anything that shows the face of who we are, having some consistency in that. Because right now, we all do that. The principals do it. I do it. Angie does it. And it is, it's pretty time consuming and spikes at certain times of the year. But again, we also felt, at least the central office administrators felt, that, we just needed a little more time. And with some of the changes in pulling that transportation into the SU budget, but I'll tell you, again, nobody would fight it if we wanted to put that position in, but I think it just might be, as Bill said, a little bit premature. And I think we could look at it for FY20, for 23.
Thank you, David. I was just thinking about other school districts in the area. I think that could be where every district, regardless of where it is or what we hear or don't hear, that there is always kind of a break in communication with a greater community, because there's always the focus just on the students and the parents of the particular school. So having something kind of getting ahead of it would be good, and I think is worth having further conversation, and like David was saying, perhaps for another budget. Let me see, Bill, your hand is raised again.
I think your mic might be off, Bill.
Dogs and cats living together. Last thing on the budget. What would be nice is, because this is a significant jump in the SU budget, is if we could put together a bullet point of what has been moved, from the local budgets to the SU budgets in this school year, so that we could have a talking point when asked.
Yeah.
And I mean, one thing with Katie's explanation about, the huge jump in Paris, that was a great explanation. But just and I'd be willing to work with you and Ed and Angie to kind of come up with that bullet point. So when board members are asked, we have this happened, this happened, this happened. So
yeah, and that also lays the groundwork for. We've always had at least one slide at our town meetings and at our public presentations dedicated to the supervisory union budget. So that would lay the groundwork for that slide. Basically, we like to go over those changes, but that's a good point.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Bill. Because we will be asked, if not at a grocery store or an email, we would be asked at our information meeting, town meeting. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing no hands raised, or let me just look at comments here quick. Okay.
I have one more comment, and that is also regarding what Scott said, which got dropped. But I agree with Scott in the sense that when we see a need for something to happen, we can make it happen. Like with the office downstairs at the SU office, it was brought up and approved all in the course of one meeting, and it's it's the salary of the communications director. It could be it's the and it's not to say that one should replace the other. It's to say that
Mhm.
our board, we're talking about a $10 million budget, and that, it could be something that we considered in less than 2 years. Just saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the things Larry and I have talked about to that end, Elizabeth, is once, because he's had tremendous pressures on his department in the middle of all this remote instruction and keeping up with, that once this subsides, we might be able to take a look and see, short of waiting 2 years, and see if there's a way to manage, that budget and that personnel to think about different ways to address this issue and this need. I agree with you.
Nancy, your hand is raised.
Yes. As you're talking about communication, what comes to my mind is the Vermont Standard, which is the communication for Woodstock and its school. And we hear about everything in the Standard. Of course, we don't have our own newspaper as Woodstock does, but it's a really important thing that they do in that paper. And we need for people to know that our schools are just as good as theirs and has wonderful things going on.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Are we ready to vote on the budget? Yes. Okay. All of those, and I will do a roll call. All those in favor of approving the budget, the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union District budget at $10,275,554 to be raised through assessments. I will start with Nancy.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Anne Marie.
Aye.
Colleen.
Aye.
Elizabeth.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Kristen.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Nikki.
Aye.
Rebecca.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
And my vote, I also vote aye. The budget for the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union District has been approved. And Ed, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for the budget. And secondly, I wanted to mention that one of the assessments that's not related to this budget, because it's its own fund, is the early childhood budget, which is $596,912. And that's part of your assessments. And when I get audited, they need to hear that. I need the board to approve a regular ed early childhood budget of $596,912.
And that's already in everything you've seen. It just needs to be a separate vote for.
Well,
sounds
if you look at what you've sent, there's 3 assessments. There's the early childhood assessment, the central office, and the special ed.
Right.
And the central office and special ed were in the $10 million budget. And then the early childhood is in a separate fund, and it's the early childhood regular education budget is $596,912.
But Ed, just for clarification, in those assessments, in that assessments tab, that 500 some odd thousand is in that, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You just need
all
that budget
separate.
voted, 'cause it's a separate fund. You need that budget voted on separately?
yeah, I need it. Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Looks like Colleen second.
Are there any questions on that?
Yes.
Nancy?
Is my microphone on?
Yeah, you've got it.
Okay. How is that assessed to the schools? Or is that, how do they break that one up? Because we don't have early childhood at Albert Bridge. I just need to know, how is that done?
Well, remember that budget, Nancy, also includes all the tuition that we're paying around the private childcare facilities for that Act 166, which said we are obligated as a supervisory union. So there are West Windsor kids that we're educating in preschools. There are Windsor kids and Heartland kids, and I think I don't know. I think we set upwards to 180 or maybe even more than that. But anyhow, to make a long story short, Nancy, we use that same formula, that equalized pupil formula to
Okay.
divide that out because it serves all the kids.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Nancy. It's good.
yeah, my question to Ed, in the spreadsheet, the preliminary comparative budget report that has the assessments, there is the preliminary SU assessments, early childhood assessment, central office assessment, special ed assessment, and then below that it says total district assessment. Is early childhood in that? Ed?
Did we lose Ed?
No, you didn't.
Did you hear the
It
question?
is. It's when you look at that particular page, the early childhood assessment is at the very top. It says early childhood assessment.
Yeah.
And it says $596,912.
Yes.
And then it breaks down what the FY22 is per school district. Heartland's 191,164.
Yes.
Yes, so it is in there.
So just want to make sure. So at the bottom of that page, there is total district assessment comparison.
Right.
And Heartland is 1,927,278.
Right.
So that includes everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think what's different this year, and I didn't realize Ed needed this. We've never voted on early ed separately. So I think that must be something the auditors wanted. They wanted something in the minutes that indicated that we authorized that money specifically for early ed. So that's why we're voting on this motion. Is that correct, Ed?
Yeah, we have voted for it in the past. This meeting's been the first time we have in the past, but yes, you're right, David. The auditors did ask me to do this. Yes.
Okay.
Right, because my understanding, all we voted in the past was the complete bottom line.
Yeah, and that's true, Amy. But the problem is that they're in two separate funds. And what you just did was you voted for the general fund budget. You voted for $10,296,000, which does not include the early childhood budget. $10,275,554 is the total between special ed and the central office. That's in the general fund. The 596,912 is not in that number.
But at the bottom of that page, it is
Yes.
counted in
Yes.
all of our assessments.
Right, because the board has asked in the past, they wanted to see how much they pay in total assessment. So when you look at your general funds, you will see an assessment for early childhood, you will see an assessment for the central office, and you will see an assessment for special ed.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Scott asked if the early childhood program budget information could be shared on the screen. Is that what you were asking, Scott? Do you have that, David?
I do. So
So let's go through it again. The teachers are there's one teacher and a paraprofessional, and then there's $6,500 there. That is the administrator stipend for that teacher. Then there's health insurance. It goes all the way down to long-term disability. Those are all the benefits associated with those two employees. Then the professional line for $2,800 is VINS, Vermont.
Institute of Natural Science.
Yes. Other professional services is $500. That was put in at the request of the director of the early childhood regular ed program. Communications is for their phone. And then there's the tuition to public. So there was an Act 156, was it, David?
166.
166, I'm sorry, passed in 2016, requires the districts to provide tuition to students that go to state-approved early childhood programs. So we took the FY20 actual and divided it by the tuition and came up with 133 students and multiplied it by the FY22 number of 3,536, and there's your 471,513. And then travel for 200, general supplies for 3,000, and that makes up the 596,912.
So then when you go over to the assessments, right here, you see the early childhood, the central office, and the special education. Sounds like these two are in that general fund, and what Ed's saying is this one is in a separate fund, and the auditors would like a separate vote on that. There's that 596,912 from the previous page, but it's all included down here.
Okay, that is good that it's all in that total district assessment comparison.
Correct.
So when we go to speak with our communities before town meeting, we have that number, and we can also relate that number to what it is, the benefits that we are receiving from paying that amount to the supervisory union. Nancy and then Elizabeth.
My question is, I thought the state mandated the early childhood, and if that's so, do we get any tax benefit from the state to pay for it?
What we get from the state is the preschool students count towards our student numbers.
80.
Yeah. Is
Thank you.
that all you needed, Nancy? Okay. Elizabeth.
Thank you. How many students are in-house at the ECE program in Windsor?
Yeah, I checked. Katie might know better than me, but the last time I checked, because they're still running two sessions, one small session, one larger session. I think it was somewhere between 12 and 14 kids. Katie, do you know off the top of your head how many are being served at the center?
I believe it's be about 11 or 12. The
Okay.
numbers are down this year because of COVID, just in general, actually in preschools in general. But so the capacity has been up to 12 students for morning and for afternoon, but total it is less than that this year.
So, I mean, did you say, can you go back to the ECE budget, please? Did you say there's only one teacher and one para?
Yeah, because of those numbers, we
Wow.
downsized. What's that?
Wow.
Yeah, there's one teacher, one regular ed para, but remember, we also get a fair amount of special education support in that room. So, and again, Katie, you could probably speak better to this, but I think in one of those sessions, there might be a little guy with a one-on-one, and then there's some speech services and case management services. So it's not like just two adults all day long, all by themselves.
But does it includes, I mean, does that include the administration of it? Is the person, the one full person, also the administrator?
Yeah, the person who's teaching in that program now, and she is a firecracker. She gets a separate stipend to administer that program. So it's all included in that. Well, it might be that actually. That's $6,500.
Katie?
So to clarify, they run two-hour sessions right now, and usually it's 2.5-hour sessions. So it's not so students come in those two different sessions, and I know there's 5 in the afternoon class right now, and there must be 6, maybe 7 in the morning. And because we attempt to have an inclusive, balanced preschool, there are a fair number of hours where either one of the SLPs is there, speech language pathologist, or the special educator, or the speech language assistant, or occupational therapist may also be there. Not full time, not for the entire block, but there are, and other years there have been embedded special ed support staff members there full time. And we anticipate actually that for next year, just because of numbers rising and some students we have coming back. So if that helps Elizabeth give a fuller picture of the adults that are within that program.
Well, yes, except that this budget is for next year when
right.
It's not for this year.
Correct.
And in the early childhood special ed budget, it does account for at least one full-time paraprofessional to be in that program, anticipating for a student. So it's hard to have that crystal ball for what early childhood students will be choosing to go there, but at least within that program, we have allotted for that if that's where the student goes. If the student goes elsewhere, then we have to have another plan.
Okay, thank you.
And that has been the challenge of the early childhood program, regular ed, that parents, it's universal pre-K. They can go to any Vermont school. So if a parent works up in South Royalton, for instance, they might want to bring their child with them to South Royalton, and we would be paying for a preschool program in South Royalton.
And supplying special ed services. That's if it was necessary. That's the expense.
Yeah, that's what that early ed staff. And by the way, as Ed explained to us the last time, this $471,513, that's the tuition we pay to those 17 or 18 programs around our area. We interface with a lot of child care centers who run preschool programs, but the tuition started 4 years ago at the inception of Act 166 at around $3,000, but it's increased to the tune of almost 25% roughly. So that's why that number, we've also had an increase in the student count too, but that's why that number continues to go up. But you're absolutely right. It's mandated by the state, and those kids are entitled to up to 10 hours of instruction. One of the things Katie's talking about with the early ed staff is whether or not, we could increase our, and increase some of our services locally, so that we're not paying that tuition out, but we're servicing kids in our buildings and getting them used to our buildings. But that's not an easy transition. That's a pretty heavy transition, but I know Katie's working on that, and hopefully maybe we'll do a little bit of it next year, but certainly by 23, the hope is to do that.
Yeah.
Katie,
Yep.
that'll be taken up by the state this year.
Great.
Here, we are actually meeting tomorrow, trying to figure out how we can, if it's possible with the budgets that we've built already, to do something a little bit more creative next year to attract more people to our pre-K, and using both regular education and special education staff in a different way. We're doing that K-12, but we're specifically looking at pre-K, possibly changing it up a little bit. And clearly the concept of building for the future would be, given feedback we've had from parents on more access to more hours in our pre-K would be, it's something we're hearing, and we'd like to see what we can do. So, and that would be great, Elizabeth. That's take it up this year and keep us in the loop, because you've got a creative team here that would love to do something.
And also, just to clarify what Bill was saying, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that special ed services follow a pre-K student out of district.
They do, in terms of if the parent can get them to us. So there's a couple rare exceptions, but so if a student is attending in South Royalton, we can currently, we have done some virtual stuff with kids who are placed out of our catchment. We are place-based, and actually one of the big uses for our downstairs space has been for students who go to a pre-K outside the district. Parents bring them in for services, either 8 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or their day off or something like that. So we still provide services and make them available, but we just don't drive to South Royalton to do it. So that's how we do it.
Thank you for clarifying.
Drive all over all the other towns, though, locally, to provide services.
Yeah. Scott, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Amy. David, could you tell us a little bit about your communication with those early child care and education providers? I remember you in the past administrator for this program, doing some travel in the fall, and you learned a lot from that, from visiting the different child centers, and then you reported back to us, and maybe that is not happening this year because of the virus, but maybe is there something else that would can assure our communities about what's out there?
Yeah, that was what you're talking about, Scott, was a couple of years ago, Jan Crow and I, when this program first got off the ground, we visited all 18 sites, and that was very helpful. And we intended to do that annually. And you're right. I mean, the last 2 years, we've been a little stifled with those visits because of COVID, and people aren't letting people in but I know that Jennifer, who's now the new Jan Crow, she meets virtually with some of those providers, and again, the range, the range of services and quality of those programs, right down to whether or not the teacher has been licensed for a while or not, it varies. And so that's why, we do try to provide some oversight, but those parents really certainly appreciate that tuition offset because the child care agency is also required to reduce their weekly charge to the parents based on that $3,000. So parents like the service and they like what they're getting. We do hear often, though, as Katie just said, that they'd like to be, you know, they'd like to get the kids acclimated in the buildings a little sooner, and the ones who are in there now would like a little more time in preschool. So that's, you know, that's what we're, you know, what we're looking for in the next year or two.
Thank you, everyone. Unless there are further questions, if we could vote.
So Wendy, did you get that amount, $596,912?
Yes,
for
I have
the-
both figures, 10, 275, 554, 596, 912, and then I have the total and the breakout of the two funds. Yep.
Good. So who made that motion, Amy? I don't even remember now. It looks like Nikki did,
Nikki and Colleen seconded.
and Colleen seconded. Okay.
Thank you, Wendy. So I will do a roll call, beginning with Bill.
Aye.
Anne Marie.
Aye.
Colleen.
Aye.
Elizabeth.
You're going in a different order this time.
Surprised you.
Chris.
Aye.
Kristen.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Nancy.
I liked being number one, but
So the reason you came up first the last time is because your hand was still raised, so you were way at the top. Yeah. Now it's alphabetical by first name. Nikki.
Aye.
Rebecca.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the budget for the early childhood program, general education early childhood program, has been approved. And when we first arranged to have this meeting on this evening at 7 o'clock, it was going to take all of maybe 15 minutes. But I believe our conversation has been good. We have had talking about communication. We learned more about the early childhood program, and we learned more about how the assessments work. So I want to thank everyone for coming this evening, and we now can begin to work on our individual district budgets and preparing for town meeting. Yay.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we will, the town clerks will be providing information on how the town information meetings will go. We're slowly getting more information from the Secretary of State's office. So stay tuned. I will provide information as I learn it. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Just to be clear, our next meeting right now is on the calendar for the 28th. We're going to hold on to that time?
Yes, we are.
Good. And I think we even came up with some agenda items last
Yes,
time.
we did.
When's our next meeting? Sorry.
28th,
28th.
Monday the 28th,
December? Okay.
December 28th. That would be our regularly scheduled
That's
meeting.
3 meetings in a month. I'm just going to call that out.
For this group? Oh, for you anyhow, right?
Yeah. No, for this group, didn't we do? Maybe it's 2.
I think it
Then
was
it'll be three.
November. Yeah, I think it was November 30th. But
Oh,
it feels
That's
like
close
three
enough.
meetings. Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels like 3 meetings. It
Feels like a lot.
All right. I move.
To adjourn?
Yeah.
I'll move to adjourn.
This is the adjourn symbol.
With enthusiasm. I like that. That works.
And I'm sorry, who was the adjourn? Or
Nancy.
second?
Nancy seconded.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Hey,
Aye.
Anne Marie, can
Happy holidays, everybody.
you stay on just for a second?
Oh, David, don't forget to stop recording.
Stay
will.
out of the COVIDs.
Thank you, though. That's a good warning.
Bye-bye.